Hey Leute und herzlich willkommen zu einer weiteren Folge BIOSHOCK 1 Remastered für die Nintendo Switch. Und wir machen direkt weiter. Ach ja, genau. Ich habe bis einen Tag nicht gespielt. So.
Ich habe schon lange nichts mehr zwischen die Zähne bekommen. Hast du was für mich und meine Mannschaft oder suchst du nur Ärger? Setz dich kurz hin. Ich muss Kaffee aufsetzen. Vielleicht decke ich sogar den Tisch mit dem feinen Tafelsilber.
Bevor du in die Fischfabrik gehst, gebe ich dir noch einen Rat. Die alte Peach führt mit Sicherheit irgendwas im Schilde. Halt bloß die Augen offen.
Mit einer Waffe kommt niemand in meine Bude rein. Leg deine Knarre in ihren Rohrpost, dann lass ich dich rein.
Wenn das der Preis dafür ist, musst du ihn wohl bezahlen. Dafür kann er dir wenigstens deine Plasmine nicht wegnehmen.
Ja, mal, welche Plasmide habe ich? Was haben wir denn hier? Aber warte mal, ich muss befeuern holen. Was? Ach, wohl ein Autohacker. Ist schade. Hätte ja sein können, dass aber drin ist.
Ich wette, als dein Boss aus der Hölle abgehauen ist, hat er zum Teufel gesagt, dass er gleich wiederkommt. Und der Teufel hat gesagt, sehr wohl, Mr. Fontaine, ich halte Ihnen Platz frei. Ryan hat versprochen, dass Fontaine ins Gras gebissen hat. Und jetzt machst du hier seine Drecksarbeit. Ryan ist ein Penner und du...
So, natürlich will ich hacken. So. Passt perfekt. Ups. Und fertig. Au! Komm schon! Scheiße, du kriegst halt auch 12, Junge. Au, 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 au. So, du gehst jetzt auch. Mann, 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 Mann. So, nein, so. Was, dich wollte ich haben. Ach, mal. Ach genau, warte mal, ich habe das Fotografieren vergessen. Oh. Erst. Ah, hier ist. Okay, okay, habt ihr Wissen. Komm mal her. Na. Verstehe. Ich habe die also quasi rausge... Oh. Kann ja sein, dass irgendwo in den Eisfächern was ist. Ah ja. Hab ich drin? Da, du da. Und du da.
Willkommen im Zirkus der Werte.
Nö.
Du glaubst, du kommst damit durch?
Ja. Ich vergesse immer erst zu fotografieren, ey.
Fontaine macht uns jetzt mächtig Feuer unterm Hintern. Er will 80 unseres Gewinns und droht damit, uns an Ryan auszuliefern, wenn wir nicht mitspielen. Dieser Hurensohn. Sammy G meinte noch, dass er darüber nachdenkt, zur Polizei zu gehen. Diesen Tag wurde er in einem Sack im Wasser tot aufgefunden. Wir haben keine Wahl. Wenn wir bei Fontaine bleiben, galten. Und wenn nicht, es muss noch einen anderen Weg geben.
Ich habe 3 Stück, einen benutze ich. Ich brauche einen wieder, ist leer. Ach komm, ich habe mein Auto gekauft wieder. Oh.
Du kannst aussteigen. Fontaine dich finden.
Scheiß auf Fontaine.
Na, warte mal, ob wir darauf wie scheißen.
Ja, Fontaine scheint ein ganz übler zu sein. So ist eine Folge. Ach,
One of
guck
the
mal.
biggest challenges Irrational faced when developed was figuring out a way to retain the feeling of a deep RPG while making the game accessible to a broader console audience. Ultimately, the team succeeded in creating an intricate system of weapon and character upgrade, player choice, and customization while keeping the gameplay fast, lean, and engaging. So BioShock, to me at least, was that it really blended RPG and sort of first-person action game together in a way that, you know, is sort of standard today, but a decade ago was really pretty revolutionary. And I know for the team, I think at some point it became wanted this to work on consoles, not
both, yeah.
yeah, but of doing a console game and a PC game, and doing something that sort of felt like a shooter but had much more depth. And I know in some of the early design docs you talked about sort of creating an FPS plus versus an RPG light. What was the difference in your mind between those two?
I think for us is the big difference between System Shock and BioShock ended up being that System Shock was more about your character growth and BioShock was more about the environment. Because with System Shock we have either our team to make enough assets or the visual power to sort of make a really convincing environment. But as we started working on BioShock, the art team was so strong that the ability to tell a story within the environment became the most important thing about the game. And that was sort of not something we thought right at the beginning. That was not really a concept we had. Started building things, we could realize that the visual world was the star of this thing. The Rapture was really the star of this thing. And telling the story outside of cutscenes, telling it in the world, so the gamer could discover the story rather than us telling him the story, telling him or her the story. And it was still very much for the time, I think for the time, quite different than what you had seen. There wasn't a lot of growth in shooters. So It was still, I think, for the time, very, very revolutionary. But I think System Shock 2 was even more ahead of its time in terms of that growth thing, because we defocused a little. Part of it was just figuring out how to do that all on a controller was very tricky.
No, I remember in the early demos, people you see a plasma, you see like a upgraded weapon, people are like, oh, I've never seen that before in a shooter. And that was, when you were coming out of the sort of, the Quake, Doom, Half-Life, where it's like you have, 8 weapons on the keyboard, knew what they were, and they weren't going to change. Yeah. Sean, was that something that, from a sort of creative standpoint, was it always clear that that was something you guys wanted to do? More depth in the game?
I mean, it certainly evolved over time, and each, upgrade path was slightly, had its own unique challenges. Like certainly upgrading the weapons, you had a weapon that didn't feel like crap, still felt like something that you wanted to use, but then the ability to add the upgrades to that, and each of the upgrades can come in any order, so you have to be aware that this, parts A, B, and C in at any different time to upgrade the weapon. In a first-person shooter, that's your star. That's the thing that you're seeing. When it comes to other things, plasmids, things that are,
Tonics.
Tonics, yes, sorry. It's been a while.
Come on, Sean.
I know, it's 10 years. Those things were more offloaded to machines that you would then have to interact with, so you're not carrying around with you. But each of these decisions on how we're going to upgrade the player, it wasn't like a mouse and keyboard. Okay, we can just use the mouse buttons at your disposal.
You could arbitrarily point at a part of the screen really easily, which you could do in System Shock too.
So we certainly, learned trial by fire when we were trying to adapt these things at the time.
Yeah, and like having different ammo types and stuff like that. Like we went through numerous iterations of the interface to make it. Like we had the first times we sort of put the interface into play, very obtuse and very tricky to get your head around, and we just kept working on it and working on it and working on it because you want to feel like second nature. But we spent a lot of time on that.
What motivated the idea of having so much choice in the way you play through this game? What was it to give the player a better sense of authorship over the experience, or what was driving that?
I've always liked the idea of giving the player a lot of agency in terms of their play style and experimenting with the play style and trying what worked and didn't work, interacting with the environment. The notion that it's sort of a playground that you get to play around with and imprint your own desire on was great, because I think we were more skeptical about being able to do that with story at the time. In fact, so much to the point where that became almost like a joke. That becomes the meta joke of the game, of how little agency you have in your story. But agency in terms of how you play the experience and how you load out your weapons and how you interact with the environment, as compared to most shooters at the time, where basically like you can shoot them with the shotgun or shoot them with the the pistol. That was really important to us. So we spent a lot of time trying to make the world react in a way that you would expect and hope it to react when you tried something.
Right.
And some of those system or decisions we made about systems fed back into the narrative, like locking Adam behind Big Daddy and the little sister, like you can't Big Daddy, which then becomes a roving boss fight, which then becomes another system that I don't know if we planned that from those happy, like, serendipity, like, oh, this decision that we made about putting Adam behind the Big Daddy totally works because now we have a different type of boss fight that you hadn't really seen in other games.
Actually, it was bad. It was the other way, because what happened was originally there was no concept of Adam, and Big Daddy just had money and other treasure on them, like every other spot. And they were so tough, nobody would ever fight them, because why on earth would you go after that guy?
Right, go off a bunch of small slicers and get the same amount, yeah.
So we had to come up with a currency that was exclusive to them, because we knew that was where the fun, but we're terrified of them and we didn't want to fight them. Yeah. So video game development and system development is a lot like economics, right? In economics you try to encourage certain behaviors through tax, usually through tax policy. Well, you want business growth, so you lower taxes on certain segments of the business economy, or you want to encourage people to move into this area, so you make incentives to move in here. We had to make an incentive players to fight the Big Daddy, and Adam became that incentive. And then once you had this Adam, then you had a piece of narrative which they could then incorporate back into the story.
Stay away from her, or it is you who will be shot next.
Easy now, Doctor. He's just looking for a wee bit of Adam, not to get by.
I'll not have him hurt my little ones.
Talk a bit about the plasmids and the vending machines and that sort of whole approach to, I guess, what is kind of a tech tree, but, and coming from PC games, you're used to strategy games and whatnot with very complicated ways of how you would upgrade things. I thought you guys did a really interesting approach to how you made it very accessible to a console audience. How did that evolve?
Ja, ich beende das immer. So. Boah. Das hätte sich ja noch ewig gezogen. So, ich beende den Part. Über Likes, Kommentare und Feedback würde ich mich immer furchtbar gerne freuen. Oder schaltet auch nicht voll, wie ihr will. Das heißt, BIOSHOCK 1 Remastered für die Nintendo Switch.